The various deaths attributed to Randy the Garbage Man, posted by Odewise on Arno Sleep. My father was a trash man in Long Beach, California for 20 years, from 1963 until 1983. It's amazing what you learn and see being personal with people's trash, and my father had many stories about his years as a trash man. There was one story, however, that he was reluctant to tell, but he told it to me anyway. Maybe because he decided it was time, or maybe because it weighed on him. But regardless, it was told. For context, it was while watching an old movie called It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. If you're familiar with that movie, there was one scene that you may remember where one of the people racing went out of their way to run over a man's hat that had blown into the street. It was there where my father began talking. In the 70s, my father knew a man named Randy. According to him, he was a nice guy, a little rough around the edges. He wouldn't remove his gloves when he ate his lunch on the back of the truck, shoving his sandwich in his mouth with trash-covered cloth, was prone to glancing in people's trash cans, caused the deaths of 4 children and 1 adult, talked a little too much, and was heavily superstitious. Mostly just oddities, other than the deaths. Even worse, the deaths weren't in a group. Randy didn't crash into a school bus going 90 in a Mustang or burn down an apartment. No, Randy accidentally killed these people in the span of 3 months, most while picking up trash. Well, one was a lack of picking up trash, but we will get to that. The first death, a 6-year-old boy, attributed to Randy, is actually not unheard of in cities. Cities have alleyways and boxes. Boxes attract children, and back then children ran free. This particular child combined all of these into a real-life horror story for Randy one morning. See, Randy saw a box in the alleyway. He was driving his truck through and decided that it looked like a good target to run over. He had done it before, and please use this as a life lesson, and did it again. Except this time the box wasn't empty. I personally have never ran over a box with something in it, so I can't completely say what the difference is, but that morning when Randy ran over that box, he knew. He knew the second there was a bump, unlike an empty box. Randy knew it wasn't trash packed in it, nor someone's broken AM/FM radio. Randy knew the second he heard the noise that he had just ran over a child inside a box, at least according to what he had told others at the time. The poor boy did not scream or whimper, and death was quick, if not instant, because the weight of Randy's trucks had collapsed the child's head first. The first death weighed heavily on Randy, and he repeatedly told himself it was an accident. However, Randy knew that if he hadn't decided to dick around and run over a box that morning, that boy would have survived. Regardless of his personal suffering from this first death, Randy had bills to pay and couldn't afford to take much time off. He worked through his grief and changed trucks. Maybe due to his superstition, maybe because he tricked himself into believing it was the truck's fault. It didn't matter. With the change of truck, Randy had a change of route. His new truck didn't have the equipment for dumpsters, so Randy had a partner, whom I have no clue, could have been my father for all I know. I never asked, and he never said. But whomever his partner was, he was witness to a new, innocent death. Also witness to a man slowly driven insane. 1 week into Randy's new route, there was a house with a refrigerator out front destined for the trash. Randy slowed down, but didn't stop, ultimately deciding in his already pained mind that it wasn't worth picking up at that moment and that they would get it on the way back. Him slowing down was mistake 1. Him deciding not to examine and pick up the damn thing, mistake 2. If either had not happened, this story would be drawing to a close. He did and didn't, and Randy went on with their pickups. Randy definitely didn't have the refrigerator on his mind when the 11-year-old boy that was playing inside rode his bike into the path of Randy as he was driving near a field. Randy saw the boy, but a trash truck loaded with people's gross didn't quite stop on a dime. Randy hit the boy doing somewhere around 20 miles an hour. Not incredibly fast, but hard enough to knock the boy off his bike and get the bike caught under the truck. The story went that before the truck even fully stopped, Randy was already jumping out, screaming, "Not again, please, God!" Helmet laws were lax, if even existent, back then, and this boy was the norm for that time, sans helmet. He had landed head first on the pavement and was unresponsive in a quick forming pool of blood originating from his head. The consensus was it was pretty bad, and Randy waited next to the boy, apologizing the whole time, from the moment he got there until the boy was driven off on a stretcher in a condition that was just short of dead. And this is how Randy accidentally killed 4 kids and not killed 3 and badly hurt 1. You can guess the eventual outcome. Blocks away was a refrigerator sitting in front of a house. Now, I guess after everything that happened, Randy was already mumbling to himself after the boy was taken off and went home early. On the way back, he said something that summed up his frame of mind. "The noise the parents make will haunt me forever." What I'm sure Randy did not hear in his apartment that night was the local news. Later that night, a family wondering where their little son went called the police. A very short-lived search began and quickly ended when the police officer opened a refrigerator in front of the neighbor's house. Refrigerators back then, or at least the neighbor's old one, wasn't like the ones today. It had a latch system that easily but securely latched once it was closed to keep it sealed. The child decided to go inside and close the door about 20 or 30 minutes before a trash truck driven by Randy slowed down, but didn't stop. That morning, leaving the child inside a suffocation chamber until he was late for dinner. My father said he knew before Randy because he heard it reported on the radio while he was in the garage. He knew what route it was on. He only wondered if Randy knew yet. Randy didn't, but he knew the next morning when he showed up to work to fill out papers for time off due to the accidents. Someone with a very large mouth, unaware of Randy's involvement, had mentioned it to the already broken man while he sat next to the office slowly writing on a form. A broken man that quickly finished his business and promptly left with tears in his eyes and a look of a defeated and dying soul. My father said that Randy looked bad coming in and looked dead going out. This was the last any of them saw of Randy, the most broken man in the world at that moment, walking out of an office in a dirty jumpsuit, bag under his eyes, tears slowly leaving them, and the weight of lost lives and destroyed families deep within. Now, keeping count is a skill that most possess, and according to the count here, we are 1 child and 1 adult short. I wish I could say that I was wrong. My dad was wrong. You read it wrong, but you didn't. This was the last that any of Randy's co-workers saw of Randy. Not heard of. Randy went back to his apartment that morning. It was full of miscellaneous items he took from others' trash that fit his superstitions, including quite a bit of sage he had acquired from some wayward bend, and burnt it to rid the demons that plagued him. He may have rubbed one of the many rabbit feet or foots he possessed, or danced to a specific Celtic song on record as well. We will never know. Hopefully, whatever he did, he felt it worked before he put the 2 connected belts together. One end around his neck and the other the stairwell rail, and jumped over between the 4th and 3rd floors in the most secluded and seldomly used stairwell in his building. Whatever he did, it didn't work though. Randy had already killed a 4th, due to the same superstitions he turned to at his end. As I said, Randy burned a lot of sage that morning, and being a little awkward, he didn't think to go checking with his neighbors. However, Randy wouldn't have wanted his last act to burn down an apartment building, so he did the safest thing he knew before he killed himself and put the smoldering remains in the bathtub and ran water over them. The apartment didn't catch fire. There was no mysterious gas leak that blew up a city block. No, it was subtle and part of the sick lottery he was playing unwillingly. Randy didn't think that the smoke would travel up through the vent to the apartment above his. Randy probably didn't know that the 12-year-old boy above him was home alone sick. Maybe Randy had known the kid had horrible asthma. Maybe in passing he heard a cough or saw the kid struggle on the stairs. What he couldn't have foreseen, unless Randy was a conflicted angel of death that knew the cost of his actions but hated himself more and more as they came to pass, was that his burning of all that sage was going to trigger the kid's asthma. That no one was around to help him. That he was alone because his mother went to go get medicine for his fever, and While there, a refill for his asthma. It was a paramedic from when the boy's mother arrived home and called 911 that ended up taking the wrong stairwell, one completely out of the way, that stumbled across Randy hanging there in his dirty Long Beach County jumpsuit, reeking of burnt sage, garbage, and guilt. My father left the story off with some dark musings, questions that made it all worse. Is that what hell is for Randy? Do children die in the world still to this day by some chain of events caused by Randy, and he's just forced to know about them as punishment for something he did? Maybe in his weird superstitions and attempts to skirt them, he pissed off something that shouldn't have been pissed off. Or was running over a damn box really a big enough sin or crime to destroy a man and multiple families with the ultimate loss? There are plenty of morals to be had from the story as a child and an adult, and maybe that was why the story of Randy was told to me in the middle of an old movie. However, one thing stuck and made me believe it was true years after the fact. I was driving with my father as a passenger. We were turning on to a street in my pickup, and a box was sitting near the curb, one large enough to fit a child. My father almost grabbed the damn wheel as I approached it too closely, and the look on his face was a fear I seldomly saw from the man. You would have thought the box was a sacred relic and me a heathen with a hammer by the look he gave me in that moment. I didn't hit the box, but my father knew something that morning. I think he knew that Randy hit a box one morning in the 70s and killed some innocent child. Then 3 others and himself. Also, I said, 3 months, and I am sure you counted a little over a week. I will explain. The boy on the bike was taken off life support just before the 3-month mark of the boy in the box. However, everyone knew that the boy wasn't going to make it the moment they saw him, including Randy. If he wasn't put on life support, it would have been a little over a week from beginning to end, which makes poor Randy sound like a serial killer, which he wasn't. My father made it clear that it was pretty bad that all of this happened to such a nice guy, even if he was a little strange.